Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is nothing short of explosive. Russia has unleashed one of its biggest and most coordinated missile and drone strikes in months, targeting multiple Ukrainian cities in a display of sheer military aggression. But what followed next shocked even the Kremlin. Ukraine's response was not just immediate, it was fierce, strategic, and brutally effective. The battlefield dynamic between Moscow and Kiev has shifted again, and this time, the escalation has everyone on edge. In the early hours of the morning, the skies over Ukraine lit up with fire. Russian bombers launched waves of cruise missiles, while Iranian-made Shahd drones swarmed over key Ukrainian regions. Kiev, Kharkiv, Dnipro, and Lviv all came under intense bombardment. Explosions rocked major power plants, railway hubs, and air defense sites. According to Ukrainian officials, it was one of the largest barrages since the start of 2024. Russia was clearly sending a message: total destruction and pressure on Ukraine's defenses. However, Ukraine was ready. Within minutes, air raid sirens blared across the country, and air defense systems activated in full force. Reports from the Ukrainian Air Force indicated that more than 80% of incoming targets were intercepted, including hypersonic Kinzhal missiles and long-range caliber cruise missiles. This was not luck, it was precision coordination between Western-supplied Patriot systems, German Iris-T batteries, and Ukraine's own modified Soviet-era launchers. The response was fast and devastatingly effective. But the true shock came when Ukraine hit back. Within hours of the Russian attack, Ukrainian drones and missiles were already in the air heading toward targets deep inside Russia. Oil depots, ammunition warehouses, and even military airports in Belgorod, Bryansk, and Kursk were struck. Russian social media was flooded with images of massive fireballs lighting up the night. Ukraine's message was clear: if Russia escalates, Ukraine will respond immediately and with force. This tit-for-tat exchange marked a dangerous new phase in the conflict. Russia had hoped its massive strike would cripple Ukraine's energy grid before winter. Yet instead of panicking, Ukraine's forces turned the assault into an opportunity. Satellite images show that many Russian bases near the border are now under continuous drone surveillance, leaving Moscow struggling to defend its own territory. Analysts believe this was not just a random escalation. Russia's new wave of strikes may have been designed to test Ukraine's air defense saturation. By launching hundreds of drones and missiles simultaneously, Moscow aimed to exhaust Ukrainian interceptors. But Ukraine's layered defense strategy, combining radar decoys, mobility tactics, and Western technology, managed to neutralize most of the attack. This success has boosted morale among Ukrainian troops and civilians alike. On the other hand, Russian media tried to frame the assault as a retaliatory strike for previous Ukrainian attacks on Crimea and Russian oil refineries. But even within Russia, questions are being raised about the effectiveness of such massive bombardments. Billions of dollars worth of precision munitions are being used, yet achieving minimal military gains. The Kremlin may be running out of options, but it refuses to slow down. The Ukrainian counterattack has been described as one of the most organized retaliatory operations since the start of the war. Kiev's use of long-range drones and Storm Shadow missiles, supplied by the UK, demonstrated how advanced Ukraine's strike capability has become. Several explosions were recorded at Russian airbases used to launch attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. Moscow's claim that its air defenses shot down all incoming threats was quickly disproven by satellite imagery showing destroyed fuel depots and hangars. What's even more interesting is the timing. This exchange comes just days after new U.S. and European defense packages were approved for Ukraine. The arrival of additional air defense systems and tactical drones seems to have emboldened Kiev's leadership. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared that every Russian missile attack would now be answered directly and proportionally. If they hit our cities, we hit their bases. That statement set the tone for Ukraine's new policy of direct retaliation. The Russian military is now facing a dilemma. Continuous long, Range attacks drain resources and risk exposing their own infrastructure to Ukrainian strikes. The psychological effect is also immense. For the first time, ordinary Russians living near the border are feeling the full impact of the war they once thought was far away. Videos from Belgorod and Bryansk showed terrified residents fleeing as explosions thunder in the distance. This internal pressure could become a serious challenge for the Kremlin's narrative of control and confidence. Meanwhile, Ukrainian resilience continues to impress the world. Despite suffering repeated blackouts and infrastructure damage, Ukraine's engineers and defense units restore systems faster than anticipated. The country's intelligence coordination with NATO has also become more seamless. Western surveillance aircraft orbiting the Black Sea provided real-time data to track Russian launch points, giving Ukraine the upper hand in anticipating strikes. This synergy between Ukrainian skill and Western technology has made Moscow's objectives harder to achieve. Experts say that the Russian high command may be escalating not for victory, but for survival. Internal disputes between the Ministry of Defense and private military contractors have weakened command unity. Putin is also facing increasing pressure to show visible progress, as domestic criticism grows louder. A massive strike, even if it fails to deliver results, helps project an image of dominance to his supporters. But Ukraine's swift and brutal response has turned that image into a public embarrassment. In the aftermath of this latest confrontation, global reactions have been intense. The European Union condemned Russia's attacks as acts of terror, while the United States reaffirmed its commitment to bolstering Ukraine's air defense capabilities. On the other hand, China and Iran remained silent, signaling a cautious distance from Moscow's increasingly aggressive behavior. For Russia, the lack of vocal support from its allies may be another worrying sign that the global tide is turning. The war has now entered an unpredictable stage. Russia's once feared arsenal seems less effective against Ukraine's modernized defenses. Meanwhile, Kiev's counterattacks inside Russia demonstrate that the conflict is no longer one-sided. What was once a defensive war has now become a battle of equal strategic blows, each side striking harder and deeper than before. In many ways, this escalation also highlights the technological evolution of modern warfare. The dominance of drones, precision missiles, and satellite coordination has changed how both sides fight. Ukraine's use of AI-assisted targeting systems and NATO-supplied radar data has created a near real-time battlefield awareness that Russia cannot easily match. The speed and accuracy of Ukraine's counterstrikes are proof of this new generation of warfare: fast, intelligent, and unforgiving. Yet behind these powerful machines and systems lies a human tragedy. Civilians in both countries continue to suffer. Apartment blocks in Kharkiv have been destroyed, while homes in Belgorod are burning. Families are caught in the crossfire of a conflict that shows no sign of ending. Both governments are determined to claim victory, but the cost is growing unbearable. Military observers warn that if this pattern of mutual escalation continues, NATO could be drawn closer to direct involvement. Western nations have already increased their surveillance and defensive readiness in neighboring countries like Poland and Romania. The risk of miscalculation, a stray missile crossing into NATO territory, could ignite a much larger confrontation. Every new strike, every counterstrike, brings that danger closer. Russia's military seems to be doubling down on its doctrine of overwhelming force, but analysts argue that this approach is failing against a highly adaptive enemy. Ukraine's forces no longer fight like they did in 2022. They've evolved into a modern, flexible army capable of integrating new technologies almost instantly. Each Russian missile that fails to hit its target becomes another a point for Ukraine's engineers to improve their systems. As the days go by, the pattern becomes clearer. Russia launches, Ukraine defends and retaliates, and the battlefield resets for the next round. But with every exchange, Ukraine grows stronger and Russia's image weakens. Even some pro-Kremlin commentators are admitting that the cost of this war is spiraling beyond control. The more Moscow tries to demonstrate power, the more it exposes its weaknesses. Still, Russia's leadership is unlikely to stop. Putin's strategy has always relied on persistence, wearing down his opponents through constant pressure. But Ukraine has turned that persistence into motivation. Every air raid, every destroyed building becomes fuel for resistance. The unity among Ukrainians has hardened into something the Kremlin cannot break with bombs or threats. At the same time, international military support continues to grow. The delivery of F-16 fighter jets, advanced radar systems, and long-range ATACMS missiles will soon give Ukraine even more tools to respond. Western allies now understand that helping Ukraine defend itself means preventing a wider European war. That realization has made aid faster, larger, and more decisive than before. As the dust settles from this latest wave of attacks, both sides are regrouping. Russia is analyzing why its missiles failed to achieve the expected damage, while Ukraine is studying how to push deeper into Russian territory without risking escalation beyond control. The balance of power is fragile, and one misstep could change everything. But what's certain is that Ukraine has proven once again that it cannot be broken. Its response to Russia's massive strike was not just a defense, it was a statement, a message to Moscow and to the world that Ukraine will not back down no matter how powerful the enemy appears. Every time Russia unleashes destruction, Ukraine finds a way to rise stronger. The war is entering a decisive chapter. Both nations are locked in a deadly cycle of strike and counterstrike, with no clear end in sight. But if this latest episode has shown anything, it's that the spirit of Ukraine, backed by the power of technology, strategy, and resilience, continues to defy all odds. And as winter approaches once more, the question remains, how much longer can Russia sustain this war before its own foundations begin to crumble? In the coming weeks, the world will be watching closely. Every explosion, every intercepted missile, and every counterstrike brings us closer to understanding who truly holds the upper hand. For now, Ukraine's brutal and instant response has rewritten the rules of this war and left Russia facing the consequences of its own aggression.